Okay, now I myself can't see it. Let me just quickly. Right, there we go. Okay. So, in the first place, we said no, controls are not relevant to fixed assets, property, plant and equipment and all the other sections. You can see that there's absolutely nothing for fixed assets. Property, plant and equipment has got nothing. The same with investment property, the same with other financial assets. But when we then get to revenue, income and expenditure, this is where we then see the effect of earlier saying, hang on, what about the controls then? With revenue, I've got 5 questions as with every one of the other items. These 5 questions are basically from the guidance again in the standards, always referring to for this account, revenue in this case, fixed assets, whichever section, is there separation of duties? Secondly, is there authorization procedures in place? Thirdly, are the documents kept for all transactions? In other words, is there proper record keeping? Is there proper safeguarding of the assets or the transaction records? And then right at the bottom is the verification of the effectiveness of the control activities. In other words, is the client kind of looking at these items and saying, well, I'm the big boss, I thought of putting these controls in place. Is the staff actually doing it, yes or no? Okay, so those 5 parts. And remember, this very bottom part is never the auditor's job. It's never the auditor's job to do the verification of effectiveness of control activities. If you say yes here, it means the client is doing something. Like, for instance, a bank reconciliation is prepared when we look at the bank account, and the financial manager or somebody else reviews the preparation of the bank reconciliation. It's not us testing the bank reconciliations. It's the client that actually reviews the bank reconciliations. That's the verification. Okay, so I always have these 5 sections. Now, how does this work? First of all, I've got the question there, and all I have to do is say, is this control there, yes or no? Now, what am I effectively doing here? If I say no, the control's not there, then obviously there's no control, end of story. But if there is a control, I almost go through it in my mind and I say, is this the type of control that, that I would expect to be there? Is it a properly designed control? If it is a properly designed control, then I will put the description in there. But if it's a control or the client thinks it's such a nice procedure, but really, you know what, they're not achieving anything. Remember, we're not testing it. We're only saying if the client does this, will it prevent or detect misstatements going onto the balance sheet at the end of the day, or let me say the trial balance at the end of the day. So in doing this, I am already testing the design of this thing, considering whether it is properly designed. Okay, if I'm saying no, it's not properly designed, then I'll just simply say no. You can see that the moment I say yes, then I've got a little cell, input cell here for the 3 that I've said yes to, which I'll complete, and then there are other matters further on as well. The moment that I say no, like here number 5, point 5, I've said no, there's no control for verification of the effectiveness of controls. Then there won't be anything else that I will have to complete, because obviously if there's no control, there's nothing to test, there's nothing, you can't do anything about it, except, of course, and this part is only relating to the guys with MMX Premium. If there's no control, I may want to report this to the client. I may want to actually put it in my management report and tell the client about it. Now here then in MMX Premium, there's then the quick link. Okay, if you don't have MMX Premium, I always suggest you right click and you insert a comment just there below that, and then you will be able to actually document the matter there. Okay, I see that on this file that I've selected now, it doesn't want to work, but there in question 4 you could have that, and I would then maybe say something like report to management, and then this is what I'm going to report to management, so that later on when I want to actually then go and compile my report to management, I can just quickly go through these documents and see, oh, there are all my management report items. Okay. Right, so that's when I say no. When I say yes, however, I have to put a description of the control. Okay, now there you can see I said only the description, short little bit of information. Next up in the fourth column, then I must say, how have I determined whether this is actually implemented or not? This is basically where you would document your walkthrough. If I didn't do a walkthrough, I selected or tested the implementation through other means, well then that's also fine. But this is basically where my testing of the implementation. Does it look like the client is doing what they say they are doing? Still not my control test itself. Because only after that do I then get the option to say, okay, fine, I know this control is there, the boss thinks it's happening, I've tested the implementation, I've done a walkthrough, it looks like it's happening. Do I want to actually go and select a sample, test the control, and place reliance on this, yes or no? And then, of course, if it's yes, I'll go and test the control. If it's no, I won't test the control. Okay, you will see that you don't necessarily design the step here. There's no space for you. That will happen just for the sake of completeness. That will happen in, let me just think now, in 1220. Okay, your audit plan, where you're going to put that, 1220, your audit plan. All right. Now you may have thought to yourself, okay, fine, that's all fine and well, but where am I going to get this description of the control procedure from? Well, that's actually quite easy. If you start off a little bit from the bottom instead of from the top of the section, you will see question 6 or part 6 that says, describe the process within both the IT and manual systems, so not just the software, also paperwork, by which transactions are initiated, recorded, processed, etc., etc. What is it really saying? Please put your detailed system description here. Now, can you see for all the other matters, even the ones here at the bottom, cost of sales, etc., where I did not say, are controls relevant to the section? Yes. Where I said no, I've got no space for my system description, because that gets activated through saying yes way back when in 1050. Okay, so my suggestion always is start with part 6, put your detailed system description there, and then from there you can identify the actual little bits of controls that you want to put in the first 5 questions. Okay. And then, of course, at the bottom you conclude and really just say that having a look at all the controls that I've now identified for revenue in these 5 sections at the top, am I satisfied that the controls, either individually, each of them individually, or as a combination for revenue, will be able to prevent, in other words, just stop the errors from happening in the first place, or then detect and correct, pick them up and fix them as we go along, material misstatements. So in other words, really at the bottom in page, or in question 7, we're really concluding on the overall design of the controls for this section, for revenue. Okay, so we don't have any other specific part, because here we're saying individually or in combination already. All right. What happens if I say, let's say like with question 5, is there verification of the effectiveness of control activities? And I say no. What I also need to do, apart from saying to myself, hang on, do I want to report this to management? I also need to ask myself, does this in fact increase the risk that the balance for sales or the balance for bank or the balance for whichever account that I'm considering now may be misstated? You know, this is your old control risk in the old risk formula. We always wanted to assess control risk. Now, we won't do that specifically. What you will effectively do is you will go and record a risk at the assertion level, because we're now dealing with revenue. Go to the revenue, record a risk, which will then end up in 1160. Okay. So it's going to affect your inherent risk, which is really just your inherent risk saying risk not considering the control. So you're already excluding the effect that controls could have. So just saying that the control's not there is not really going to make that big a difference. Okay, but when you see something is wrong in the controls, or there's not something in the controls that you would have expected to be there, you record them under assertion level revenue. Not the control environment section, because that is only at the financial statement level. And problems in the revenue section relates to the account balance, the assertion level section. Okay. The last thing that I want to show you before we move on to general questions is in the other section where we talked about related parties earlier on. With related parties, again, you've got similar questions: separation of duties, authorization, any other document or documents and records kept for transactions, safeguarding of assets, and then verification. Now, let's say it's your normal small client. This guy doesn't even know what the word related parties means, or he's heard of it, but he doesn't understand what it is. He really just expects you to pick up the related parties and to properly disclose those in the financial statement. So obviously, he will then probably not have a system. He will not have any controls. That's why I've put no, 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 no. No system. And for that, you would probably even go and record a risk in 1160 again. Okay. But you have to at least consider that. That's what I've done here. I've said there's no specific process, there are no controls, and I've considered them. I might even report that to management and say, guys, you know what, you've got specific considerations or specific responsibilities for related parties. Okay. Okay. I think that is about the part that I've prepared.